Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. I have been live streaming Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and I gotta say, it's been an absolutely incredible experience. A lot of people have been saying this ranks very high on their Game of the Year list, and thus far, I can absolutely see why. And the reason I want to make this video is, to be frank with you, I feel like the first hour with this game, where it's basically setting up the overall story, is the best intro I've ever experienced in a video game before. And I wanted to talk to all of you about it because I know many people who have had the opportunity to play this feel the exact same way. Now, to give you a frame of reference, let me first talk about the games that I probably would have placed first on this list if you had asked me before Expedition 33 came out. There are kind of two games that I've always looked at as neck and neck, as having the intros that I really enjoyed the most, that made me feel immediately emotionally invested in the story. The first one of these is Final Fantasy X, just an incredible piano that plays at the very beginning, and the camera circles around to all the different party members, showing you the look of despondence and despair on their faces. Is obvious something really traumatic has happened. And then finally it shows Titus climbing up and saying to the player, "Listen to my story. This might be our final chance." And to me, it basically felt like he was saying directly to the player, if you don't help us, if you don't figure this out, everything is going to fail. We're not going to make it. And I thought it was just an incredibly powerful way to kick off the game. Really captivating. I've said multiple times, I place Final Fantasy X as one of the greatest Final Fantasy games ever released for sure. I'd probably say 8 is the best one, and then 10 is right underneath it. And this intro is part of the reason why. It just immediately hooks you and makes you invested in the story. And then the other game that I would have tied for greatest intro of all time is Mass Effect 2. I love the way that it immediately kicks off with the Normandy being attacked and eventually destroyed. It doesn't do a whole lot of work to try to explain to players what happened in Mass Effect 1, try to get you to up to date on lore. No, none of that is necessary. Let's just get right into the situation is desperate, and you're probably the only one who can save the galaxy. And the other really cool aspect of this intro that works is that there are multiple times where Shepard's personality really shines through. And it's especially a treat if you play the first game. I actually love playing through this intro as a renegade Shepard, even if my playthrough is supposed to be Paragon, just because I love the way he tells Ashley, "Get your behind on the ship," and that "I'll get Joker's cripple ass up out of here." Like, it's such a insensitive way to handle the situation, and yet so consistent with who Shepard is. He may not always say exactly what you want him to, but he's absolutely the person you want next to you in a dangerous situation. Just unquestionably one of the greatest intros in all of gaming. So much more focused on action and keeping things fast paced, as opposed to the Final Fantasy X intro, which is much more slow and somber and about trying to emotionally pull you in. For years, I've really enjoyed both of those games and both of those intros, and basically looked at them as the pinnacle of how to kick off a game. In my opinion, Clair Obscur does a better job. I have never been more emotionally invested in a story and an experience than I have when live streaming this game. So, to be fair, the intro is at least about an hour. It took me like an hour and a half, but I'm live streaming, so everything's a little bit slower. But for most places, it's probably going to take at least about an hour to get through the entire intro if you do all of the content that's available. So to set up the story, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is basically about trying to take down a villain called the Paintress. And she's a character who is slowly wiping out everyone. Every year, she paints a number, counting down by one. And all the characters whose age was equal to the previous number die. So when the game starts, that number is at 34. And the intro is basically about you slowly making your way to the celebration. And really, it's more like a funeral where you're going to watch this number count down to 33. And then all the people who are 34 are going to instantly die. And so people are saying their last goodbyes and trying to prepare themselves for what's about to happen. Now, part of the interesting dynamic here is the character you actually control is a guy named Gustav. And he's meeting with a woman named Sophie, who's essentially the love of his life. And he's trying to basically be there for her during her final moments. Now, Gustav is part of Expedition 33. So every year, not only is there a countdown where a lot of people pass, but there's also an expedition that's sent out of at least around a dozen people who try to go to the continent where the Paintress is and see if they can track her down and presumably take her out so that this cycle will stop. And there have been 67 expeditions thus far. All of them have failed. But the theory is that those previous expeditions would be taking down journals and leaving information that is going to make it easier for each expedition that comes after them. And that hopefully the 33rd one will be the final group that has to do this. So it's a very interesting dynamic in that Sophie is essentially about to die. And on some level, a lot of people feel like Gustav is going to die as well because he's heading off for an expedition that has already failed 67 times. So looking at all that together, one of the things I really appreciate about this intro is that it takes its time. And that's been very, very consistent with this game from what I've seen. It is not afraid at all to completely slow things down, carefully take a look at the different characters, and really give the story room to breathe. This is not the type of experience where they feel rushed or forced to constantly bombard the player with combat and action and keeping things fast paced. And that definitely takes confidence from a developer. It's really, really cool to see. The dynamic between Gustav and Sophie is absolutely incredible. They've been broken up for 4 years because Sophie didn't want to have any children. She wanted to bring children into this situation. And so consequently, even though they love each other very deeply, they've been disconnected because there was disagreements about how this crisis should be handled. And so there's a real sense of lost time. And that's consistent with all the other people you meet throughout the intro as well. Some of them will have instructions for what they would like to have done with the people that they're leaving behind. Others are obviously very angry and frustrated by the overall situation. There are some people who are frustrated with those who went out on expeditions saying, hey, you could have stayed and I would have had an extra year or 2 years with you. Instead, now I've lost all that time and I was going to die anyway. So there's just a lot of layers to what people are experiencing during this moment, on top of what's going on with Gustav and Sophie as well. It is all just really, really mature, really, really deep, and seriously well done. So you spend 30 to 40 minutes hearing all these stories and talking with these people. And then finally, you get to the scene where Gustav loses Sophie, and it's just absolutely devastating. No doubt about it. So, so well done. The pain and grief that he's going through is readily apparent, both in his face and his movements. It is really, really hard not to feel for him. And the fascinating thing that I feel like it hammers home is that Gustav is not fighting for himself. He's not really fighting for the future that he's going to have or that he's going to see, because that future has already been destroyed. Sophie was the love of his life. Sophie was the woman he wanted to have children with, and there's no way for him to get her back. So instead, what he's really fighting for is to ensure no one else has to deal with the pain that he's going through. And I can't really remember a game that put me in this type of situation before, and it makes me so emotionally invested. And it also hammers home for the player that the cycle must be stopped. Like, you're right there with Gustav that this is horrific, that there's no way anyone should have to deal with something like this. And whatever it takes to make this situation come to an end, we're going to have to do it. We are going to have to find the paintress. Absolutely incredible introduction to a game. And I'm not going to reveal what happens at the beginning of Act 1, but I will say that when you travel to the continent and actually get started on the expedition, right away, this game hammers home in incredible fashion that the stakes are high and the situation is extremely perilous. This game just puts its foot on the gas, and I haven't seen it let up yet. Now, one interesting thing I want to talk a little bit about is, obviously, the intro was very impactful for me. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was pretty much pure perfection. I have seen other people who have strong feelings against it because it is so sad. And because obviously it's sad in a way where, technically there's no hope. At least there's no hope for Gustav, right? He's not going to be able to get back the love of his life. He's not going to be able to undo the pain that he's feeling and so many people around him are feeling. And so there have been some people who have said, this is a poor way to start off a game, and that this is really not the way a game should start off, period. That games are supposed to be about escapism, and that starting it off with something that's depressing and bringing people down is the exact opposite of the impact games are supposed to have on us. I disagree with all that. I completely disagree. In my personal view, games are art. And absolutely, art can make you happy, art can make you feel good, but art can also tap into aspects of your history and what you're feeling that don't necessarily feel so good. And that can make you sad, or can make you angry, or can make you feel some sort of way that you didn't really want to feel. And I think, especially coming from the perspective of someone who, has experienced loss and has experienced, losing people that I wish were back again. It definitely hit home watching this. It definitely tapped into some of the things that I've experienced in a very personal way, and I think that's what great art is supposed to do. So for me and my perspective, I think the intro is absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't change a thing. And I'm really, really excited to see how this game continues to shake out. Anyway, want to give you all my thoughts. Absolutely fantastic start. Hopefully, the game will continue to capitalize on that great beginning. Let me know your feedback down in the comments. Appreciate you watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.